Where the gentleman is sitting, that was the sleep area of Chester Gillette. Now his cell had 3 rooms. One main room, Chester used to go out there and do exercise, and then there was 2 little cells. One he slept in, and one where he had like a little dresser with his clothes in it. From outside of this cell that we see, Frank Brown came to visit Chester one day. He grabbed a hold of the bars and he said to Chester, "Why'd you kill my daughter, you scoundrel? You filthy murderer! Why'd you kill my daughter?" Chester shot back against the wall, and Austin Clark, the sheriff, came between Frank Brown and pulled him back. "Why'd you kill my daughter, you murderer? Why'd you kill my daughter?" The death certificate, Grace Brown, skirt maker, South Osceola. Body was claimed by Frank Brown, her dad. In the meantime, Chester Gillette was taking his incarceration lightly. But there was a strong case being built against him. There was a good chance Chester could go to the electric chair. No dream team for Gillette. He was given court-appointed lawyers, Charles Thomas and Albert Mills, both public defenders. The judge in the case was the Honorable Judge Irvin Devendorf of Herkimer County. The jail, which sat right across from the courthouse. Now this is what the jail looked like in the year 1906. Today the jail is used as an office building. Chester Gillette's cell was in the back, 3rd floor, right hand side. Now the trial was held in this courthouse. This is what the courthouse looked like in the year 1906. It was now November and the jury had been picked. There were 12 men, local farmers, and business. You see, in the year 1906, a woman could not serve on jury. George Ward, the DA, made sure that each juror believed in capital punishment. Chester Gillette maintained his innocence all throughout the trial. He said that Grace Brown committed suicide and jumped out of the boat because he refused to marry her. He tried to save her when she jumped out of the boat, but she had already gone under. Chester Gillette is a degenerate. All circumstances point to the belief that he hit Grace Brown in the head and dumped her in the water like she was a piece of trash. He took her to South Bay. It is the only secluded spot on Big Moose Lake. He waited for the best moment. The best moment came at supper hour. Chester Gillette is a rat, a slick wolf, a monster. He's a bloodthirsty snake, a brutal bloodthirsty snake. He took a human life. He took the life of Grace Brown. On December 4th, the jury finally went out. They were in session for about 5 hours. They came back in, and Judge Devendorf asked the foreman of the jury, have they reached a verdict? The foreman of the jury stood up and said, yes, we, the jury, find the defendant, Chester Gillette, guilty of first-degree murder. At this time, Chester was chewing a piece of gum, and he never missed a stroke. He also asked for a pen and a piece of paper, and he wrote this message to his father. Dear Father, I have been convicted. On Sunday, December 9th, Louisa Gillette arrived in Herkimer. Now the next morning, December 10th, Monday, this was the day Chester was to be sentenced. Judge Devendorf asked Chester to approach the bench. Then he said, Do you have anything to say before sentence is passed to you? I, Chester Gillette, am innocent of this crime. Judge Diefendorf stood up and read the notice. You have been found guilty of murder in the first degree. Therefore, it is the decision of this court that you, Chester Gillette, be transferred to the Auburn State Prison. There, at such a time, you shall be visited with the penalty of death by electric chair. At this time, there was complete silence in the courtroom, except for the weeping tears and cries of Louisa Gillette. Chester was transferred to Auburn Prison with his friend, Sheriff Austin Clark. On his way to the prison, there were some kids on the train who were asking for Chester's autograph. Chester and Austin Clark, the sheriff, arrived here at Auburn Prison. Chester said goodbye to his friend, Sheriff Clark, and he asked the sheriff to be there for his execution. Chester was escorted to the south wall, which contained the building called Death Row. At the end of the corridor, behind the green metal door, stood what is called the electric chair. Louisa, Chester's mother, still believed that Chester was innocent, so she decided to start a campaign and raise money to get Chester a new trial. The title of her campaign was Chester Gillette, Guilty or Not Guilty. Chester's sister Hazel moved to Auburn. She stayed at the local Salvation Army. Hazel would visit Chester at Auburn Prison at least once a week, usually on Thursdays. Chester received another visitor, this gentleman, Preacher Mack. Now, Preacher Mack was from Herkimer. He got a message from another preacher from Herkimer saying that Preacher Mack should go to Auburn to try to convert Chester to Christianity. Chester had been on death row for over a year now. On February 18, 1908, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected Chester's appeal. This meant that Chester would not receive a new trial. The only chance they had left was New York State Governor Charles Hughes. He might give Chester Gillette life in prison. So Louisa went to see the governor. The meeting lasted for about 2 hours, and some say that the governor of New York State and Louisa Gillette were on their knees praying. But the governor did not interfere with the execution. On March 29, 1908, he wrote up this draft to say he would not interfere. Now Chester's life was doomed. He had to face the electric chair. On the evening of March 29, 1908, Chester Gillette confessed his sins and the murder of Grace Brown to his spiritual advisor, Henry Mack. Chester said goodbye to his mother and his sister and then started running. In the shadow of the valley of death, it is my desire to do everything that would remove any doubt as to my having found Jesus Christ. My one regret at this time is that I have not given him the place in my life while I had the chance to do so. If the young men of this country could only know the joy and pleasure of a Christian life, there is not one thing left undone which will bar me from facing my God. I know my sins are forgiven. I am free. God knows me. My task is done. The victory won. Chester E. Gillette. On the morning of March 30th, 1908, Chester Gillette was awakened by guards at 4 a.m. Chester asked for a piece of chocolate cake for his last meal. A little while later, his spiritual advisor, Henry Mack, came to see him. They spent an hour and a half together, and then the guards came in and said it was time. Chester and Henry Mack took that walk to the electric chair at 6 a.m. Chester Gillette was placed in this electric chair at 6 a.m. Chester Gillette was the 27th person to be executed in Auburn's electric chair. Chester Gillette, Monday, March 30th, 6:15 a.m. This is the original death notice. Chester's body was taken to Soul Cemetery, which is at the end of town in Auburn. Chester was buried underneath this tree. Now this area is in the back of the cemetery. Although his burial place is unmarked, according to cemetery records, this is where Chester is buried. Grace was buried in the South Osceola Cemetery. Gracie was buried next to her mother, Minerva, and her father, Frank. Exhibit number 42. This is the actual tennis racket that Chester Gillette used to kill Grace Brown. Now this is the same tennis racket that he buried underneath the log at Big Moose. This tennis racket surfaced in the year 2006. The owners of this tennis racket wish to remain anonymous. Grace Brown's lock of hair was taken from Roy Higbee when she was murdered. This piece of hair is kept in a museum. What you're seeing is the actual hair of Grace Brown. The story of Chester Gillette and Grace Brown was now a New York State Adirondack legend, and it probably would have stayed that way, but in 1925, Theodore Dreiser wrote the classic novel An American Tragedy. This novel is rated as number 16 in the USA Modern Library, and Mr. Dreiser was nominated for the Nobel Prize. In 1931, Paramount Pictures produced the movie An American Tragedy. Now this movie is one of the first talk movies ever made, right when the silent film era had ended. It gave you a basic tale of Chester Gillette and Grace Brown and was first released in Herkimer, New York. In 1951, Paramount Pictures was added again, and they produced the classic movie A Place in the Sun with Monty Clift and Elizabeth Taylor. Now Monty Clift played Chester Gillette brilliantly. This movie won several Academy Awards, including Best Director for George Stevens, Best Screenplay, Best Costume Design. Charlie Chaplin was quoted as saying, "A Place in the Sun is the best movie Hollywood ever made." In 1986, a Mr. Craig Brennan wrote the true story of Chester Gillette in a book that he called Murder in the Adirondacks. If you get a chance, you've got to get this book. Mr. Craig Brennan did intense research for the life and the history of Chester Gillette and Grace Brown. In 1998, another book was published called Adirondack Tragedy, by Joe Burnell and Patricia Enos. 2006 marked the 100-year anniversary of the famous tragedy. Big Moose Lake will always carry the legend of Grace Brown and Chester Gillette. More so, Grace Brown's ghost has said to have appeared on Big Moose Lake. Unsolved Mysteries did a story on the ghost of Grace Brown. Now Grace's ghost has said to appear in this area. This is the Coldwood Lodge. The lodge is located on the south shore of the lake and less than a quarter of a mile from where Grace was murdered. As I was filming this area, I was standing on a dock and I had my camcorder pointed towards the shore. All of a sudden, I see a white shadow go across the camcorder. At first, I didn't know what to believe because I was in so much awe to the point where I almost went into shock. I was filming this area and I had the camcorder towards the shore. I was standing on this dock. I wanted to share this heavenly beautiful experience with you, the audience, and let you decide for yourselves. Is this the ghost of Grace Brown?